Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Grand Death Auto by Joanna Campbell Slan, narrated by Amy Mcfadden. 1. "There's a cop in our kitchen," said my daughter, Anya. I noticed with surprise that she was wearing a pink sweater over her favorite floral dress. That dress had been in the dirty clothes hamper last night, but she wanted to wear it today, so she'd gotten up early to wash and dry it. The fact she'd taken responsibility for the chore herself brought a smile to my face. My oldest child was growing up. In fact, her birthday was 3 months away. She would be turning 14. The years had flown by. "Oh, a cop in the kitchen. The one I married?" I winked at Anya over the head of her youngest brother, Ty. My 5-month-old has 3 adorable wispy curls of brown hair on his otherwise bald pate. Wearing a fresh diaper and a dusting of baby powder, he was ready for his breakfast bowl of warm rice cereal topped with chopped bananas. Ty is still nursing at night, but he's been eagerly exploring real food for a week or so. "Nope." Anya rolled her eyes at my joke. "That cop doesn't ring the doorbell. Not anymore, at least. He has his own key. Or did you notice?" I did. A lot has changed in our lives since Detective Chad Detweiler made his first appearance. Notably, there have been births, deaths, weddings, and funerals. Plus investigations. Can't forget those. There's also been my daughter's journey into the teenage years and all the emotional ups and downs. Most of the time, she's a miniature adult, but once in a while, she's just a tall toddler. In the filtered light of the upstairs hallway, Anya's features were hard to make out, although her platinum blonde hair picked up the sunbeams and glowed like a halo. "Come here, sweetie." I motioned with my free hand. Anya backed up to me. While I jiggled Ty on one hip, I grabbed the tag sticking up in the back of her sweater and smoothed it down. "A strange cop is in the kitchen. What else is new?" I tried to sound unconcerned. Being married to a police detective is new to me. The presence in my home of men and women carrying firearms takes a bit of getting used to, and I'm not quite there. Yet. Anya's late father was a real estate developer. If you'd have asked me, I would have told you that real estate developers don't carry guns. I was wrong. Dead wrong. "This new guy is a cop from Illinois, one I haven't seen before." In the 6 months since Detweiler and I have been married, my daughter has become rather blasé about Leos, law enforcement officers, showing up at our house. Most of them show up at dinner time because Bronwyn Mcfadden, a.k.a. Brawny, our Scott nanny, is a fabulous cook whose reputation has become legend in the St. Louis County Police Department. Right. I wonder who it is. I guess we'll find out soon enough. "Eric? Honey? Come on. If you don't hurry, you'll be late to school." I opened the door to my middle child's room. Eric's back was to me, and I could tell he was trying to buckle his leather belt. He'd gotten it for his 6th birthday. The new addition to his wardrobe has caused all sorts of problems. The dexterity it demands often leaves Eric frustrated. He needs a head start when nature calls. After 2 accidents, I wanted to toss the belt in the trash, but my son loves his new fashion accessory. Ta-da! Eric twirled around to show off his achievement. For a little guy, threading a belt through all the loops and buckling it is a major victory. Anya and I both cheered for the kid. "Bravo! Way to go! High five, buddy!" While I carried Ty down the stairs, Anya took Eric's hand. Soon he would be too grown up for holding on to his sister. I hoped that Eric and Anya would remain close as the years rolled along. At the foot of the stairs, the sweet fragrance of petunias and freshly mowed grass drifted toward us. So did the strident male voices. I'm getting used to police business being conducted under my roof, but the tone of the conversation told me this visit was different. Anya, Eric, and I hesitated before walking into the kitchen. "I'm only asking." The visitor began. "No, she's not a cop, and you can't guarantee—" Yes, there was a problem, but it could wait. I needed to feed my kids breakfast and get them off to school. "Go on," I said, as I gave Anya a tiny push forward. She led Eric into the kitchen, and I followed to the sound of chairs being scooted back from the table. Our visitor jumped to his feet, as did my husband. The stranger had the squat body of an MMA fighter, eyes the color of wet shale, and a face shaped like a busted-up shoebox. This cop had seen his share of rough times. He gave me a once-over, studying me from head to toe, while I did the same to him. I took particular note of his Illinois State Police baseball cap. Because we live across the river in a suburb of St. Louis, Missouri, my curiosity was piqued. My husband made the introductions. "Honey, this is an old classmate, Detective Randall Schultz. He's retired from the Illinois State Police." I stepped forward to say, "I'm Kiki, and this is Ty, our youngest." "Call me Schultz," our guest said, while staring at the baby and extending his hand to me. His shake was firm, but not unkind. Detweiler continued the introductions. "Schultz, this is my daughter Anya, my son Eric." "Gina's kid?" Schultz's jaw dropped. "I heard rumors. Geez, I didn't believe 'em." "Yes, well—" Detweiler's tone was evasive, but Schultz was far too astonished. He rambled on. "Man, that's low. Really low. And then she took off?" Detweiler made a swift slice across the neck gesture with his index finger, a warning for our visitor to shut up. It took Schultz a minute, but he finally caught on that talking about Gina, Detweiler's deceased first wife, was not appropriate, especially in front of Eric, her mixed-race son, the boy she'd begged us to adopt in a letter from the grave. Still, Schultz couldn't help himself. He kept staring at our oldest son. I couldn't blame the man. There's that famous tune in Sesame Street where the announcer asks which item doesn't belong in the set. Our family could have been featured on that Sesame Street segment. Anya is as pale as an iceberg. I'm blonde with blue eyes. Detweiler has dark blonde hair and green eyes. Ty has green eyes and sandy brown hair. Eric is mixed race. His skin is the color of a Starbucks caramel macchiato, and his curls are red. Schultz rocked on his heels as he worked through the logistics. Since Gina was a striking redhead with alabaster skin, it's easy to figure out that Gina got pregnant while cheating on Detweiler. Eric is the result of her illicit relationship with a black cop, a man who'd been a mentor and instructor to both Detweiler and Schultz. "That's just hard to credit," Schultz said, while staring at Eric. At that precise moment, the clomp, clomp, clomp of shoes interrupted the visit. Usually Bronny doesn't make much noise. This morning I was glad for the interruption when she came down the hall that separated our kitchen from the laundry room and garage. Right behind the nanny was our Harlequin Great Dane, Gracie. My husband had a twinkle in his eye as the nanny and the dog approached. I could tell he was laughing at Schultz's astonished reaction. But my husband didn't forget his manners. He said, "Bronny, this is Detective Randall Schultz, retired, an old friend of mine. Schultz, this is our nanny, Bronwyn Mcfadden. Bronwyn served in the SRR, the Special Reconnaissance Regiment. That's a British Special Forces unit." "You don't say." The retired detective offered our nanny his hand. She responded with a strong shake. Schultz went from staring at Eric to staring at Bronny. Or maybe he was intrigued by her outfit. She wore a plaid skirt fastened with a gold pin, a white blouse, knee socks, and brogues. A sporran, the traditional fur-covered pouch that hangs from the belt, was part of her ensemble. "And this is our dog, Gracie." Detweiler looked down at our black-and-white giant with her sweet floppy ears. "Gracie, shake." The big dog obediently offered her paw. Once Schultz recovered from the multitude of surprises, I could see him trying to figure out how a detective managed to afford such highly skilled live-in help. The answer was none of his business. Bronnie nodded at the men. In her thick Scottish accent, she said, "Excuse me, gentlemen. Kiki, I was thinking I'd treat the bairns to breakfast at McDonald's. Is that all right with you?" I hesitated, because I don't like the kids eating fast food, but a gleam in Bronnie's eyes suggested she knew best. At 42, Bronnie is technically middle-aged, but she has the youthful build of an athlete. She works out every morning with my husband. Their friendly competition has been a boon to Detweiler, and she's pushed him into terrific shape. There's nothing soft and fuzzy about Bronwyn Mcfadden, except when she looks at our children. Then her whole demeanor changes, and her eyes become suffused with love. No doubt about it, she would lay down her life for my babies. On this particular morning, she'd heard enough of Detweiler's conversation with our guest to surmise that the situation in the kitchen wasn't appropriate for my kids. With that unerring instinct all children have, Anya realized she could press her advantage. She looked from Bronnie to me and back to Bronnie and said, "Coffee?" That's another food choice I don't like my kids to make, but today it wasn't a battle worth fighting. "Yes, sweetheart, this morning you can have coffee," I said. "McDonald's!" Eric whooped with joy. "McDonald's," Anya shrugged. "'Tis a rare treat. However, today's a good day for it." Bronnie sealed the deal. Detweiler chimed in, "Kids, do you have everything you need for school?" Of course they did. I gave Anya a kiss and leaned down to plant a smooch on Eric's forehead. "You two be good for Bronnie." "We will," Anya and Eric said in one voice. "Why don't I take the young master?" Bronnie opened her arms to Ty. "The weather's balmy. He'll enjoy the ride." I handed off my baby. "We'll be back." With that, Bronnie marched our crew down the hallway to the garage. I stood in the kitchen, staring after them, with my heart in my throat. I love my kids so much. Gracie left Detweiler's side and trotted over to me. She sat down at my feet and leaned her whole body against my legs. That was her way of offering comfort. I absent-mindedly reached down and fondled her ears. It took me a minute to tear myself away from the empty hallway. "Kiki?" Detweiler called to me. "Honey? Bronnie made a batch of cinnamon rolls. They're still warm. Can I pour you a cup of coffee? We saved a seat for you." That was his way of asking me to join him and Detective Schultz. 2. You're aware, I take it, of the rash of teen suicides we've had in Jarvis Township? Schultz started talking as soon as I sat down. He didn't even wait for Detweiler to fill my mug with steaming hazelnut coffee. "Who isn't?" I poured fresh cream into my coffee and added 2 spoons of sugar. Every night the news led off with another horror story. So far, 7 kids had taken their own lives, one at a time, 7 different methodologies. 2 others had tried to commit suicide but had been unsuccessful. That didn't include one girl who was in the hospital in a coma. "Yes, the suicides have been well publicized," Schultz said. He sipped his coffee and looked me in the eyes. "As you might imagine, the state police are doing everything possible to track down what's behind all this. They've even brought me out of retirement as a consultant to help them figure it out." His phrasing seemed odd. I repeated his words. "What's behind this?" "Uh-huh." "I don't understand. According to the news, this is one of those unfortunate situations where kids copy each other. Like lemmings follow each other off of a cliff." "That's an urban myth," my husband explained. "They don't do that, honey." "Oh." Schultz nodded at me slowly. "I know what you mean. In most instances, that's exactly what happens. The kids influence each other. But I believe there's something else happening in Jarvis Township. Something more organized and targeted." You're thinking these kids were killed? I blurted, without censoring myself.
No,
he hurried to say.
Well, maybe not. We can't tell. I'm worried that someone's working behind the scenes, manipulating these kids, encouraging them.
What? I stuttered. Encouraging teens to hurt themselves on purpose?
Yes.
Schultz winced.
You might have seen the news about that girl who talked a boy into killing himself. There was also that woman who pretended to be a teen and told her daughter's classmate she was better off dead. So then, the classmate committed suicide. I'm worried there's someone evil out there who knows these kids well enough to manipulate them.
Surely there'd been a mistake. But those situations you just described were one-offs, oddities. You're talking about a whole bunch of kids killing themselves over at Jarvis Township High School.
Right. But the analysts have studied other communities with high suicide rates among teens. None of them come close to this. This is the worst sort of anomaly you can imagine, and it's happening in a school with only 325 students.
I reached for one of the cinnamon rolls. The numbers tumbled around in my head. 7 suicides and 10 attempts in a student body of 325? That seemed like a lot of carnage to me. Schultz must have read my mind.
It's bad. When experts ran the numbers, they were stunned, especially given that this is a sparsely populated rural township. In addition, the rate of self-harm has gone up exponentially. I doubt that there's any one person behind this. Social media has been weaponized, Detweiler said. Kids get confused by online influencers. What the influencers present is an idealized version of life. When teens compare that ideal to their own lives, they panic. One thing leads to another. It doesn't take much to push a sensitive kid over the edge. Whether it's one person or two or a group, we need to figure out what's driving this.
Schultz grabbed a cinnamon roll and tore it to pieces.
I think these kids are being encouraged to take their own lives. I don't know how. I don't know who. I don't know why or when,
our guest said.
But I don't think these problems are happening in a vacuum. What do the parents say?
Detweiler got up. He came back with a coffee pot and refilled all our cups. As my husband sat down, I pushed the pitcher of cream toward our visitor. Detweiler continued.
I assume you've interviewed friends, classmates, siblings, and neighbors?
The detective's spoon clanked against his mug as he mixed several spoons of sugar into his drink.
Of course, nobody reports seeing or hearing any suspicious interactions. In fact, it's really weird. Those close to the victims tell us that in the weeks leading up to the attempts, these kids had never been happier. Ever. That's one of the reasons parents are so distraught. These suicide attempts seem to come out of nowhere. The families are totally blindsided.
7 kids? I repeated.
Might even be 9. Could be 10. Or 11. We're not sure. 2 more teens have died in separate suspicious car crashes. No weather complications, no speeding, no unfamiliar stretches of highway, no treacherous roads, nada. There have also been a rash of accidents, self-harm incidents, 1 case of alcohol poisoning. Another kid locked himself in the garage with the car running. Luckily, his mom found him in time.
This was a lot worse than the media had reported. And you're sure this isn't one of those copycat thingies? I've read about suicide epidemics among young people, I said. Schultz shook his head.
I don't think so. We hired a psychiatrist to conduct forensic examinations of the personal belongings of 3 of the victims. He believes these deaths were triggered.
How can he make a judgment call like that? I asked. Today there are so many ways that kids can have a secret online life. They could have used the family computer, or gone to an internet cafe, or bought a throwaway phone. Schultz studied me.
All I know is that we've lost 7 kids, maybe even more, all in 4 weeks. We have a problem over in Illinois, and that's why I'm here. I heard through the grapevine that Chad Detweiler's new wife—"
I bristled at that adjective, new. Schultz made it sound like I was an appliance brought in to replace an older model. Yes, my husband had been married twice before. Eric's mother, Gina, had been Detweiler's first wife, his high school sweetheart, and she'd cheated on him. Then he married Brenda, who became a drug addict. Nothing like that was going to happen again. No way. I resented the fact that Schultz made it sound like I was one in an ongoing parade. I didn't like it, and I wasn't going to stand for it. His current, his only, and his last wife. I folded my arms over my chest. A hint of a smile flitted across my husband's face.
Right.
Schultz was flummoxed. He hadn't counted on me standing up for myself.
No offense meant.
I didn't respond with the expected none taken. Instead, I gave him an icy stare. To my astonishment, he burst into laughter.
I'd heard you are a pistol. No pun intended. Good for you. That's why I'm here. The cops on your side of the river sing your praises. They say you've got moxie. You aren't afraid of anything. Nothing gets past you. I'm hoping that's true, because I need your help. Unofficially, of course.
Okay, I'm listening.
I've heard you're pretty good with arts and crafts. Is that right? The art teacher at Jarvis Township High School will be going on maternity leave next week. I was hoping you could take her place as an observer until school's out. That's less than 3 weeks away. You won't be in any danger. You would have to apply for the job, filling out all the paperwork, but I can assure you that if you apply, you'll be hired. You would be paid like any other substitute teacher. Do you know enough to keep the students busy for 2 weeks, more or less?
That's easy, I started to say, but my husband interrupted.
I've already told Schultz the answer was no. Absolutely no.
Detweiler reached over and took my hand. That steamed my coffee. After years of being treated like a doormat in my marriage with my late husband, George Lowenstein, I was not about to let my current husband boss me around. On the other hand, I wanted to make an informed decision. There had to be a balance. "Excuse us a minute, please, Schultz." Looking at my husband, I stood up and tilted my head toward the hallway. Detweiler got to his feet reluctantly. I don't often get mad at him, but when I do, it's a doozy. My husband marched dutifully behind me as I led the way to his office. Once I closed the door, he threw up both hands in a gesture of surrender.
"Honey!"
"Don't you honey me!" I sounded like a character in a TV sitcom. He closed his eyes and heaved a world-weary sigh.
"Sorry. I know better. The second the words were out of my mouth, I realized how you would take them. I screwed up. Please forgive me."
His apology took the fight right out of me. I didn't protest when he tried to hug me. He whispered,
"I was being overly protective. I've got a bad feeling about what's happening, and I don't want you in the middle of it."
I relaxed into him. I loved the feel of his body. The way he held me close made every cell inside me sparkle with joy. He sighed and added,
"The logistics would be a nightmare."
He had a point. With 3 kids, I couldn't walk out the door on the spur of the moment. Since Ty was born, I've gained a whole new respect for Napoleon. He moved entire armies across great distances. Getting 3 kids across town is challenging enough for me, and I have a nanny. And I almost told Schultz I'll do it. What was I thinking? Maybe I was trying to escape. As much as I love having a brood of 3, there are days when I feel totally drained. Worst of all, I don't like to share how I feel. To admit that motherhood isn't always the most fun job in the world would somehow diminish me. I work with moms all day long in my scrapbooking and craft store, Time in a Bottle. My clientele, scrapbookers and crafters, are fabulous mothers who are dedicated to their kids. Yesterday, I helped a young mom put together an album memorializing her stillborn child. How could I ever tell her that I wasn't looking forward to going home because my nanny had the night off? I couldn't. As this rattled through my head, I realized I wasn't really angry with Detweiler. Sure, he'd overstepped his boundaries. The bigger problem was that I needed a break from my family, and the police officer in the kitchen had offered me a way to get one. You're right, of course. The logistics alone make helping Schultz impossible. I kissed Detweiler. Not a passionate kiss, but a quick, I love you.
I promise not to speak for you again, Detweiler said. You're an adult. You're capable of making your own decisions.
He hugged me and let me go. Yup. I took his hand. Together we walked back into the kitchen. Detweiler pulled my chair out for me. Schultz had a hopeful expression in his eyes. That faded when I said, "Please accept my regrets. You're dealing with a tragic situation, but I can't help you. The logistics are impossible. We have 2 kids who are looking forward to their summer vacation. I'm still breastfeeding our baby. I have a business to run." The weight of my responsibilities came tumbling down all around me. My presence would be a distraction at best. Schultz's entire demeanor changed. Sitting there with drooping shoulders, he toyed with the spoon he'd used to stir his coffee. The utensil left a brown liquid splotch on his paper napkin. He said,
"It was a long shot, but I had to give it a try."
I excused myself to get ready for work. Not long after, my husband showed his friend the door. As I drove to Time in a Bottle, I thought about Schultz's request. Over the years, I'd met many people who've lost loved ones to suicide. Even though I know that suicide is an act of desperation by a person who is in incredible psychological pain, a voice inside me screams, "That's so selfish." The pain that suicide victims inflict on those they leave behind is horrific. How were the parents of the young suicide victims in Illinois handling their grief? If they were like the surviving family members I'd met, their souls had been torn into confetti-sized pieces and scattered. Their guilt was tremendous. One mother who visited my store kept repeating, "If only I had called her 30 minutes earlier." Surviving family members seemed doomed to keep asking themselves over and over again, what if? With these gloomy thoughts in my head, I pulled into my usual parking space a half an hour before the store opened. Gracie sat next to me in the passenger seat. She has been coming to Time in a Bottle ever since I adopted her. Most of the day she snoozes in the back room. 2 of my coworkers had arrived before me. They were kind enough to put on a pot of Caldi's coffee. Caldi's is a local chain. Although that's part of their appeal, I love their coffee because it's fabulous. Truly, it is. The back room was empty when I walked in. That could only mean that my coworkers were busy out on the sales floor. After hanging my purse on a hook and putting Gracie in her doggy playpen, I picked up her water bowl, washed the Pyrex glass container with dish soap, rinsed, and refilled it. Simple tasks create a soothing rhythm, a familiar pattern that can be calming. After I set the bowl in her doggy playpen, I poured my 3rd cup of coffee for the day. Dosing it liberally with cream and stevia, I reviewed what Schultz had told us. I pulled a chair over to the table we use for our breaks and wondered, what would I do if Anya's middle school had an epidemic of suicides? Would I try to help track down the cause? Or would I have said no, like I did this morning? Had I made the right decision? Should I have agreed to help Schultz? I was so caught up in arguing with myself that I didn't notice my friend and second-in-command, Clancy Whitehead, until she waved a hand in my face. "Kiki? Hello? Where are you? I've been talking to you for 5 minutes. Anybody home? Here's..."
Sample complete. Ready to continue?